Okay, guys, so we're going to visit Frog and Toad, and I'm going to read you two chapters. And I want you to notice that the characters are the same, but each story is its own individual story. So this is Frog and Toad Together by Arnold Lobel, and you're all really familiar with Frog and Toad. So, table of contents, a list is going to be the first chapter I'm going to read. A list. One morning, Toad sat in bed. I have many things to do, he said. I will write them all down on a list so that I can remember them. Toad wrote on a piece of paper, a list of things to do today. He wrote, wake up. I've done that, said Toad, and he crossed it off. Wake up. See, he crossed it off. Then Toad wrote other things on paper, a list of things to do today. Eat breakfast, get dressed, go to Frog's house, take a walk with Frog, eat lunch, take a nap, play games with Frog, eat supper, and go to sleep. There, said Toad. Now my day is all written down. He got out of bed and had something to eat. Then Toad crossed off, eat breakfast. Toad took his clothes out of the closet. He put them on, and then he crossed out, get dressed. Toad put the list in his pocket. He opened the door and walked out into the morning. Soon Toad was at Frog's front door. He took the list from his pocket and crossed out, go to Frog's house. Toad knocked at the door. Hello, said Frog. Look at my list of things to do, said Toad. Oh, said Frog. That's very nice, Toad said. My list tells me that we will go for a walk. All right, said Frog. I'm ready. Frog and Toad went for a long walk. Then Toad took the list from his pocket again. He crossed it out, take a walk with Frog. Just then, there was a strong wind. It blew the list out of Toad's hand. The list blew high up into the air. Help, cried Toad. My list is blowing away. What will I do without my list? Hurry, said Frog. We will run and catch it. No, shouted Toad. I can't do that. Why not? Asked Frog. Because, wailed Toad, running after my list is not one of the things I wrote on my list of things to do. How silly is he? Frog ran after the list, and he ran over the hills and swamps, but the list blew on and on. At last, Frog came back to Toad. I'm sorry, he gasped, Frog, but I could not catch your list. Blah, said Toad. I can't remember any of the things that were on my list to do. I will just have to sit here and do nothing, said Toad. Toad sat and did nothing. Frog sat with him. After a long time, Frog said, Toad, it's getting dark. We should be going to sleep now. Go to sleep, shouted Toad. That was the last thing on my list. Toad wrote on the ground with a stick, go to sleep, and he crossed it out. Go to sleep. There, said Toad. Now my day is all crossed off. I'm glad, said Frog. Then Frog and Toad went to sleep. So as you can tell, there was characters, a problem, and a solution, right? All right, so here's another one that all of us are familiar with. It's the garden. So again, my same characters, maybe there's going to be a new character sometimes. But right now, it's just about Frog and Toad in the garden. Arnold Bell only chooses to write about Frog and Toad in his Frog and Toad books. The garden. Frog was in his garden and Toad came walking by. What a fine garden you have, Frog, he said. Yes, said Frog, it's very nice, but it was hard work. I wish I had a garden, said Toad. Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground, said Frog, and soon you will have a garden. How soon? Asked Toad. Quite soon, said Frog. Remember reading this year? Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. Now seeds, said Toad, start growing. Toad walked up and down a few times, and the seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and loudly said, Now seeds start growing! Toad looked at the ground again, and the seeds did not start growing. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, Now seeds start growing! Frog came running up the path. What's all this noise? He asked. My seeds will not grow, said Toad. You're shouting too much, said Frog. These poor seeds are afraid to grow. My seeds are afraid to grow? Asked Toad. Of course, said Frog. Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. And soon your seeds will start to grow. That night, Toad looked out the window. Drat, said Toad. My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark. So Toad went out into the garden with some candles. I will read my seeds a story, said Toad. Then they will not be afraid. So Toad read a long story to his seeds. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds, and all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds, and all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground, and the seeds still did not start to grow. What should I do? Cried Toad. These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world. Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. Toad, Toad, wake up, said Frog. Look at your garden. Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming out of the ground. At last, shouted Toad, my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow. And now you will have a nice garden too, said Frog. Yes, said Toad. You were right, Frog. It was very hard work. So that's the end of that chapter. So again, same characters, but different settings, different problems. So we're going to start talking about this and writing a character web tomorrow.